thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, get to the other end, 6 feet of distance. This is one thing, when learning about you all, this is a voice acting panel, but you all do so much more than voice acting. So I know we're talking about voice acting today, but it's like producing, casting, line directing. You're all so talented.
Oh gosh, thank you.
Thank you so much for being
We're
here
all
today.
so tired.
You're like, we're working really hard.
Thank you guys for watching the anime that we work so hard on.
Well, we appreciate your hard work.
Oh, gosh, thank you.
I won't be asking you a few too many questions because you already have such a wonderful line here, but I'm going to give you the dreaded origin story question. What got you into voice acting?
Oh, okay, I guess I'll start.
We all look at you.
You. Kristen, go.
So my origin story is pretty unique. I started off selling my artwork in Artist Alley. I was an independent comic book artist, so I only sold original art. I was making a comic about unicorns that turn into hot dudes.
Well, hold on now. Do you still sell them?
I do not, because I am now mortified by it. But so I started there, and I got a pretty good following, and so I got invited to be a guest at a convention for my comic book art. And then they let me hang out with all the cool people in the green room, and I met another comic book artist / voice actor. He mostly just did like walla and background voices, but we hit it off, and we were talking, and he talked about being a voice actor, and I was like, oh, I used to do theater, and I really miss it, but I have kids. I don't really have time to pursue theater anymore. And he was like, well, maybe you could try voice acting. And for some reason, I thought, yeah, that'll be way less time consuming. He was like, sometimes Funimation does open auditions. You could always check it out. And I was like, maybe I will. But I didn't ask for more information, so I did this really cool thing. You guys could probably do it too. I Googled it. I just typed in, I was like, how to be a voice actor, and there was a forum at the time. It is no longer there because Funimation is now Crunchyroll. But there was a forum that was just like, do you want to be a voice actor? Fill out this form, follow these instructions. I'm like, I can follow instructions. And so I did. I was like, dear Funimation, I used to do theater, and this is what my range is. I didn't have a demo. I didn't have a resume. I was just like, I would be interested in doing an open audition. And FYI, I can bark like a dog because I was Toto in The Wizard of Oz. And so that was I literally wrote that, and I sent it, and I was like, that was stupid. They're not going to think that's funny. And I was like, they wouldn't hire me. I wouldn't hire me. And 5 months went by, and then all of a sudden one day they were like, hey, did you still want to do open auditions? And I was like, yes, I do. Please put me on your schedule. And I was like, oh my God, I do not know what I'm doing. And so I went back to Google, my old friend, and I was like, how to be a voice actor. and I found a whole forum that was just dedicated to the audition process for Funimation at the time, so I knew what to expect, and I practiced reading out loud. I would record myself in my car on my lunch breaks, and I'm like, all right, I think I got the gist of it, and went in, did my open audition. I was like, well, that was a really cool 15 minutes. I'll probably never hear back, but it's whatever. And here we are, 12 years later. I'm still here. So that's my crazy kind of origin story.
That's usually how it goes. Wow, 25 years later, we're still here.
We're still here. They still can't get rid of us.
For me, Jason Douglas. He is the voice of Beerus, Gildarts, and Fairy Tale. You guys know him. You love him, I'm sure.
He's my dad and Dr. Stone.
There you go. He's a fantastic voice-over actor, but he and I went to college together, and we were doing a Shakespeare show called Cymbeline, and he was like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and I think you'd be really good at it because it's dubbing Japanese animation into English. And I'm like, you mean anime? You do anime? Where do you do anime? Because my brother was a huge anime fan, and he had already shown me Ghost in the Shell and Akira and all that. He's like, well, I'm working at this place here in Houston. And I'm like, don't they do all that stuff in LA? He's like, no, it's here in Houston. And he gave me the number, and I auditioned. And it was kind of one of those weird things where you call, and they're like, oh, we just happen to be having auditions this weekend. I was like, okay, cool. And then it got to a point, I started working with Funimation and ADV, and it got to a point where I was in college, and I had to decide, like, okay, am I going to go back to school full time, or am I going to just see where this leads me? And I decided to just see where it leads me, and here we are, 25 years later. And I tell you what, I'm so glad it found me, because I can't imagine doing anything else, you know? What about you?
I'm going to tell Jason Douglas that you called him a voice over actor.
Well, but he
Like,
he does a
like-
lot of other stuff too.
I know, but it's the
The voice
emphasis,
over
the way you said overact.
He
like,
has
He's the voice over the acting.
over the
just-
act.
he-
that
he
does have a-
overacts
He
is
does
what he
not
does.
over.
That's
He's
the way
brilliant.
That's the way you stressed it.
It is
He's
the
a
way I
voice
stressed it.
overactor.
He would probably just go,
So, for me, let's see. I grew up wanting to be a film director. I did a bunch of film and radio and TV education growing up. That's what I did, and went to college for it. And I came home from spring break because, little known fact, the coolest thing you can do on spring break is just go home. And I was sitting in my kitchen eating cereal, and my dad was like, I always thought it was weird you wanted to be a director because your whole life's been about cartoons. I went, crap. And I was like, well, that's a good point. And so I split my focus then in college and still pursued film direction and focus a little bit more on voice acting and just acting and speech communications and related fields. And graduated. After graduation, I was working for anything that came through where I lived, because I lived in New England and there was not a whole lot of film production that goes on up there. But I worked on a bunch of reality TV shows. Some of them don't even exist anymore. There was one show called The Disaster Guy. I worked on like 4 out of the 6 episodes of that show that came out. I worked on the NBC Nightly News, and I also worked on this little show called Toddlers and Tiaras.
You
which
gave us Honey Boo Boo?
I did not
Okay.
give anyone Honey Boo Boo.
Okay,
I am
just
not taking the blame for that. But I was doing that. I did that for about a year after college, and I was like, this sucks. Like, because it was like going into, especially like the Disaster Guy show was, going into houses that had been destroyed through natural disasters or something, or like they had a bad fire, and so it'd be like, cool, we need you to go inside this house, and we need you to set up all these lights and whatever, and by the way, there's asbestos in this house. And it's like, are you kidding me? You're not paying for insurance, whatever. And so I was like, this blows. And but at the same time, I was sort of doing voiceover on the side, and like I did this video. My first ever paying voiceover session was a thing I did for a guy that I knew from college. And it was a YouTube video about how to set up a web domain. And that one video that I did paid as much as an entire day working behind the scenes on reality TV. And I was like, this sucks, and this is awesome, and I'm gonna focus on this instead. And so I moved from New England down to Texas and was there for just under a year. And in that time, I got a demo made. I submitted it to Funimation. Colleen had open auditions. She called me in. She went, you're really, really good. I was like, oh, thank you. And then I never heard anything. And she didn't call me in for anything because, little known fact, Colleen was never calling in new people like that. Like, she's even admitted it. She's like, I've never called in new people in those days. And so little did I know I had a death sentence director as my open call.
I had
director.
Joel McDonald, who loved calling in new people. So lucky.
So after a few months after that, I got impatient, and I looked up Okratron, and I drove over to Okratron, which is Chris Sabat's studio, and I knocked on the door, and he almost barreled into me. And they took my demo, and I was like, cool. Maybe I'll get lucky and I'll hear something in a week. And then 3 hours later, I had an email from Chris Sabat himself saying, hey, sorry I treated you like crap. We like your sound in your demo. We're going to call you in for something. And so then a few days later, I had an audition. I booked the audition. And then he called Joel McDonald and told him about me. And Joel McDonald called me in for an audition, and I booked the audition. And here we are 12 years later.
Hey, yo.
I remember hearing from Chris. He's like, somebody dropped their demo off, and it was awesome. And I was like, hey, that's
oh my God, I
great.
never knew what the other side of the story sounded like.
You know how they're always like, hey, just cold call. And you're like, that doesn't work. And you're like, I just literally handed my demo to Chris Abbott when he was walking out the door of his business. And you're like, all right, maybe it does. Maybe it
I
does
would say
work.
99% of the time it really doesn't work. Like you have to.
Yeah, everybody don't send your demos directly to Chris
You really-
Abbott.
I
You
just
really
had
have to
nightmares
have-
of Chris being like pelted with like zip drives.
Physical CDs with demos on it.
Frisbee them at him. Justin, what about you?
Oh, let's see. I was a hyperactive kid. My mom said no and stuck me into community theater when I was pretty young. And so I did that and got bit by the play pretend bug. And so that led to doing theater in high school and being part of that. I grew up in a little town called Fort Smith, Arkansas. So if any of you are from small towns and you think you can't make it as an actor, well, that's just not true. So anyway, eventually I found my way to Dallas, Texas. I went there to be in a band, and the drummer for that band had just been hired on as a mix engineer for Funimation. And so I had also done some radio work in college and after, and so then from that is where I got an opportunity at Funimation to start doing this. And that was 25 years ago. Ouch.
So 12, 25,
like-
12, 25.
That's right.
Oh.
We planned it that way.
Interesting.
We put you on the panel just for that. I love how every way is different that has gotten into this industry, because I know for some people it can feel very daunting and very hard. And just keep trying, I think, if you're interested in doing it, because you never know what it's going to be that's going to get you in the industry, in my opinion.
Unfortunately, there's like no manual
Correct way,
that
yeah.
exists. It's all just a lot of experimentation.
You would have found it on
and-
Google.
Yeah, you would have found it.
Yeah.
But also, too, you guys are in a different time than we were. Like, back even 12 years ago, you didn't have the ability to put yourself out there. So if you can do voices and stuff, do TikToks, do Instagram Reels, do anything you can to get your voice out there. Because not only in anime, but in other areas of voiceover, like video games and stuff, there's always people that are looking for voice actors. So you never know who's going to stumble across your page. So put your voice out there everywhere. Why not?
I agree. Well, I won't keep the lovely audience waiting anymore. Y'all have been patiently waiting, standing in line. Go ahead, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Chris. I've met with all of you before. I'm a big fan of My Hero. So much, you guys are so talented. Found out with Kristen about the artwork, and it was just stunning work. Monica, you know that I have a crush on you.
We all
He
do.
told me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had. Well,
He told me he has a crush on Monica. So.
I had to apologize to him, so I brought him a very specific item for an autograph. But love all the characters, but obligatory question: who is your favorite character that you've ever done that you would be devastated if you no longer did or no longer do? And what was that one trait that set them apart from all the others?
You ever seen that movie Inside Out?
Yes.
That's what the inside of my head looks like, except it's all these characters, right? They're kind of my kids, right? Like after I get to do the voice for them, a little bit of them stays with me, and hopefully a little bit of me stays in there with them. But they are truly my children, You can have a favorite kid, you just can't say that stuff out loud, man.
I genuinely don't really have a favorite that I've done, because in my mind, I always just rationalize it that I'm like, well, every character ends eventually. Like that is a reality of this job. That's a reality of any type of story. Maybe you get lucky and Dragon Ball decides to keep on coming back, and so it never really ends. But it ends, sometimes, and then it comes back. But so there will probably be a day at some point where like I don't voice certain characters anymore. I haven't voiced Connie in over a year. So it's one of those things that I try to keep that separate. I let every character live in its moment, and then I let it go. After the session, after the show, after the whatever, just because, like, I don't want to be 5 years down the line and be like, well, it's not as good as Bakugo. So.
I'm the same way. I can't pick. Jamie says it's because I'm a Libra, whatever that means. I'm like, okay, Jamie. But for me, I would say that I definitely feel more of a connection to those characters that we've had for a long time. So like your Bulmas, your Mira Janes, your Frappies, and also some of the older shows, because now we do what are called simuldubs, if you guys aren't familiar. We record anime weekly, and it comes out on a weekly basis, which means that every 3 months we have a completely new list of shows we're working on. So like back in the day, we would record a show, and it took like a year. So you really got to know those characters and live with them. Now you've got like 12 weeks to figure out your character and get it all done. So that's why sometimes when y'all come up with the new shows and we're like, which one I got lost in what world and I got reincarnated as which one?
You were reincarnated as a flip-flop. You don't remember?
So that's why sometimes the newer shows, even though we love them, we might have a hard time remembering just because it's so fast. But yeah, any of those that we've spent a long time with. But I will say at this point in my life, I kind of don't know where Bulma ends and I begin. Like, we've kind of merged. And I love her so much because I feel like I'm a stronger woman because of her. So yeah, I'm pretty partial to her just because of the amount of time we've spent together.
Similarly to Justin and Cliff, I have a really hard time picking just one character. And the way I explain it is that every character has a piece of me in them. Like, I see a piece of myself in them. Like, Malim is fun. She's chaotic. She's kind of a gremlin. And there are times that I feel that way.
No.
Yeah, chaotic gremlin. Just ask my husband. But, there are other characters like Kachina had a really hard childhood, and she's struggling to make a name for herself. Or Akane deals with, bullying and suicide, and those are things that I have had to come across in life. And so all these characters have different things about them that make them precious to me. And to pick one favorite character is like trying to pick which part of myself I love or hate the most. And I love all of me, even the damaged parts, because that's what makes me who I am. And so I can't pick, which part of me I love the most, because all of those pieces make me. So I can't pick one favorite character.
Actually, that's a much better answer than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
You're like, I was just hoping you'd say Malim.
Great question. Thank
you.
you. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Mikey. My question is, what's a line that, a very emotional line, and for you specifically, and why was it so emotional, and how did you sort of deal with that?
So at the end of season 3 of My Hero Academia, Monica's character puts my character in his place for having put her into a position to lie, which isn't very heroic, right? And so Kirishima's crying and he's apologizing to her, and that was kind of the moment for me that I feel like every time I see the animation now, I feel like I know what he's thinking, like what's going on in his head. But that was my little moment of kind of clicking in with him. It was an emotional scene, but the memorable part for me was like, that when you talk about merging, that was the merge point.
That's a good one. That whole episode broke me. Of course, and also as a voice actor, it's hard because you have to think about what your character sounds like when they're crying, especially when they sound like this. They're not gonna sound normal when they cry. So it was difficult, but man, that was so sweet. And also that whole, I don't want to spoil anything, but for anybody that hasn't seen the later episodes, Deku has a hard time, and we all try to rally around him, right? And when that episode where we're all like, come on, man, come back to us. I think I had one line and I teared up because everybody was so passionate. It was like talking to our friend Justin and being like, And that's the one thing that I do think is funny about voice acting. It took my husband a while to get used to it. Like, we tend to forget the characters' names and just call each other by, so Bakugo becomes Clifford, Kirishima becomes Justin. I'm like, oh, did you see what Justin just did? It's very crazy, but yeah.
You go. I'm
There
still
are thousands
marinating.
of lines,
God,
so
I've got
if you don't have an answer, it's a-okay.
I have so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
If you
is,
can't
I have more than
pinpoint
one.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, the episode that Monica was just talking about, for Bakugo, I started crying from the moment that Bakugo yells out, "Get him, class rep!" Because he throws Tenya. Like, because that was just such an incredible moment for Bakugo to be like, someone else, I can't do this, and it has to go to someone else. That's a big step for him to admit. But I mean, that whole episode, the apology, the can I still catch up to you in season 7. The very last line I had in Free Ren Beyond Journey's End as Himmel, it would be embarrassing. Their tearful goodbye wouldn't suit us. It would be embarrassing when we met again. The irony is I was crying terribly, like, as I was delivering. Like, I was crying so bad. That show was so beautiful. And then, like, the Duke of Death and his maid, where I am the Duke and my wife is the maid, and the two characters are in love, and it's a difficult relationship because of their differences in, like, class. I kid you not, I think I cried every single episode of season 3. Like, terribly cried. And there's a big scene near the end of season 3 where, I mean, I was bawling in the booth recording that episode. So,
Yeah, Duke of Death made me cry. There were a lot of scenes in that. There's one that really sticks with me is in season 1. They kind of go into the Duke's backstory, and he's in this really dark place because he can't touch anyone, he can't have any friends. He feels like he's unloved and that he's unlovable and that he's just anybody that's still in his life, he feels like he's a huge burden to them, so he runs away with the intention of, like, just letting himself die, like getting lost in the woods and dying. And not necessarily suicidal, but losing the will to live. And Alice tracks him down in this snowstorm, and she's yelling at him and begging him to think about the people that he would be leaving behind and their feelings. And then she says, like, just thinking about it makes me want to cry. She says, "You deserve to be happy, Your Grace." And the way she says it and looks at him, I'm just like, I wish everybody had someone that could say that to them. Like, it's such a touching show. That's the one that I think sticks with me the most.
Oh,
Thank you, Mikey.
Great question. Thank you. I petition to have emotional support puppies at the studios for those hard days.
I wish. Anytime there's a dog there, I am a happy clam.
Yeah.
Fun story. In season 4 of Attack on Titan, aka the final season, part 2, there's a very big confrontation, and for those of you who know the show, you probably know the one I'm talking about, where Connie has a scene on a dock, right? And it was a very, very emotional scene. I was crying hysterically recording the scene. It was very, very terrible, but we were recording from home. It was during the pandemic. And I got done with Mike on the line. We were recording remotely. So I hung up, and I stepped out of my booth, and I'm in my home office, and the home office has these doors that have windows in them. And both of my dogs were staring into the room. And the doors just like friction shut, but they stick pretty strong. The dogs pushed the doors open and came in to be with me.
Dad,
after
are you
the-
okay?
Yeah. So,
That's cute.
yeah.
Hi there. Hi, what's
Hi.
your name?
Amelia.
Hi, Amelia. What's your question?
So my question is, was there a character's death in any anime you have been in or watched that emotionally impacted you?
Spoiler
All right,
alert,
well,
city.
If you haven't seen all of My Hero, close your ears now. Okay, because hashtag spoiler alert, here it comes.
La, la, la,
If you
la,
don't want to
la, la,
know, don't listen. Twice wrecked me. Like, physically wrecked me to the point to where I looked at Cliff, just tears coming down my face, and I was like, for real? I'm like, is he like dead or anime dead? Like, and he was like, is dead.
Where is Shenron?
The story of that, though, is that I knew it was coming, and we were a week behind on an episode. And so, like, we had 2 episodes, and I knew the episode had come out, and we were going to go to a convention that weekend. And so we watched the one episode. We still had the one where Twice dies. And I was like, hey, we should just watch the next episode. And she was like, oh, you want to? I was like, yeah, we should just do it right now because we're going to be at the con. It would be good for us to know what happens. But in reality, I was like, she needs to know now because if someone spoils it at the con, we will never be able to watch the rest of the show. She
she'll
will
never
not
be
watch
okay.
it happen if she knows it
Twice
happens.
is my favorite character. So.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna have to say, okay, has anybody not seen Dragon Ball? Okay, but we
Everybody
all
heard about this
We
little
all
anime?
know that people die and come back, right? That's not a surprise. Okay.
Anime dead.
Anime dead. When Vegeta anime dies, that for me was like a big deal.
Which time?
In
Trunks time,
in the-
I assume.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
the Majin Buu.
Yeah, the Majin Buu stuff. That was pretty. I mean, it was terrifying to be eaten. That was weird too. But mostly it was, his death in that one really, really freaked me out. Like it was hardcore.
He finally became a dad.
I
For
know.
like an hour.
I mean, when Raditz died, that made me sad, and then Boo died, and that made me sad. Yusuke kept dying. That was okay. The saddest death for me was watching Bebop, the end of that show. Mary Elizabeth once said she was working on directing it, and she says, you know, if this is a great story, if this is a great story, he's got to die. If it's a perfect story, he does. Anyway, knocked me over. That one took me for a ride.
No deaths make me sad. It's fine.
You're like, they
Clifford's
can
a
always be
psychopath.
brought back. It's fine. They just got to draw them back. Great question. Thank you.
I'm not a psychopath. It's fine.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hello. I don't have a name, so don't ask me.
I didn't know. It's fine. Mysterious. I like it.
You're like
No, I just don't
Odysseus.
know
You're
it.
nobody.
No, I just don't know it yet. But I wanted to ask if there was ever a time in any of your respective medias where you had to improvise, or you were asked to, or you accidentally did, and it was kept in.
Yes. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I play a farmer named Flora. It's this quest about how she falls in love with a goblin. Because, Tiny Tina Wonderlands is by the people that make Borderlands, so it's a wild ride. But there's this point they're like, and then you have to go over here and release this, like, shower of, I don't know, musk, like goblin musk, to attract a goblin. And I was like, release the musk showers, you got it. And they're like, actually, that's so funny. Could we write that into the script? Do you mind? And I was like, we can absolutely write that into the script. So if you're playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and you hear, release the musk showers, that's my beautiful idea. It's me changing the world for the better.
I love that. I'm just gonna say 2 words. Ghost stories. I was Momoko in Ghost Stories. Jesus loves you all. And so we basically kind of made it up as we went along. So yeah, that was the big one.
I mean, I'm sure I have, but I couldn't tell you any that have actually made it into the shows. Like, I was kind of notorious back in the days for being the ones that would come up with really funny joke lines to mess up other actors. One of my favorites, this didn't make it into the show, but it was on Cardcaptor Sakura. There was this moment where there were like 3 flaps that Toya has, and there's no voice in the Japanese, and they wanted to add something to it, which is something we do all the time because they animated mouth movements, so there should be a sound or something, maybe. And Caitlin Glass was the voice director, and to her credit, she took too long coming up with words, and that gave me the time to think of something else to say. And so when we finally went in to record it, I just went, I'm a scat man. And but I was just gonna say whatever she wrote right after it, except the engineer laughed so loudly that I heard it in the booth, and then it made me laugh, and it knocked me off of doing the take. And then every single time that we beeped in to do it, but I was looking at the flaps, I started laughing because I just kept thinking of him laughing at it. And so I ended up having to do it not looking at the screen. Like, I had to like close my eyes and just be like, whatever the line was and stuff. But I mean, I did that stuff all the time. Like, I did so much of that stuff, and you probably don't ever get to hear it. So it's fine. It's fine.
I don't know that I can't think of one that I have done, but I do have a favorite improvised line. It was from Brina Palencia as, I think, Poir in the Battle of Gods movie, and they're all at the party right there at the beginning of the thing, And we've kind of had an inside joke that Poir doesn't actually exist. Poir is just Yamcha's Yamcha's the only one who can see Poir. And so Poir has got an improviso line. She goes, "Am I really here? Can anybody see me?" So I thought that was pretty funny.
Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I love your crown.
Oh, thank you. It's Saturday. Tiara day.
This is my
Saturdays for the
Saturday
tiara.
Saturday. I'm a feral tiara.
Hi there.
Hi. I'm Sophia, and my question is, since all of you are in My Hero Academia and have seen the show, what would be your favorite arc in the whole show?
Mine used to be season 3. It used to be season 3, especially the front half of season 3, which is funny because I'm not in it very much. I get abducted, and then I'm gone. But I loved that season. But that said, I would have a very hard time telling you that I like anything more than the second movie, Heroes Rising, is so good. But season 6 and season 7 were just straight fire. They were so good, and I don't know if I can pick a favorite anymore.
I'm very of a similar mind as it used to be the second movie. I always rate it by how much I cry. And so the second movie made me cry. Every time I see it, it makes me cry. And part of it's just because I'm so proud of my husband. I think he does such wonderful work on it. And I'm like, look at him go. But the last few seasons, especially the most recent season, I texted so many of our friends being like, "So you made me cry, and I just want to say you're a really talented actor, and my biggest fear is that I'll never be able to act as good as you do." So yeah, it's hard. It's just everyone's been really bringing their A game on it.
Yeah, these last 2 seasons have been bless Lucy and Leah Ochako.
Those
and
are the
Koga.
2 I texted.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll never be as good as Lucy.
I got to sit on the sidelines and watch all of that go down, and I was like, oh, I love y'all. But yeah, other than that, good Lord, I have to go with Heroes Rising, and I'm going to tattle on him. He is such a fantastic actor, but we don't get the opportunity a lot of times to really get actory and talk about stuff. And we were in kind of a rush to record that movie. So Colleen and I were both directing at the same studio, and we would run down the hall to talk to each other and give each other notes. But Clifford and I actually sat and talked about the end of the movie and how we wanted to approach it and how he wanted to walk away from it. And I'm so proud of how that turned out and everything. Of course, I had very little to do with it, but just hearing his ideas from the beginning and seeing how it came to fruition was just really awesome.
Yeah, that's like trying to ask somebody, "What's your favorite page in this book?" So it's the whole book, but it's a fantastic book.
Thank you.
Can't put it down. I'm going to be up all night reading the next chapter.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello, my name is Victor. I'm sad someone beat me to the tiara comment. Beautiful. So currently I'm an aspiring voice actor. Got a couple dozen auditions out there already. I'm trying to think how I can crunch this into one question. What is something that you wish someone had told you sooner while you were starting out as a voice actor? For example, how to make sure you have variety in your line delivery rather than just saying the same thing but louder.
Honestly, my biggest piece of advice has nothing to do with the actual acting part of the job. It's that we live in a time right now where everyone is on social media and everyone feels like they need to say whatever thought pops into their mind. And I feel like the biggest detriment to today's voice actors that are up and coming is that they don't know when not to talk. You don't have to have a comment on every controversy that comes through. People look at that. It can really affect your career in a negative way. If I could give anyone advice, it would be to be professional. Act like the person you want to work for is reading your Twitter every single day, or your social media or whatever. I post on social media and then I disappear. I post an update, I post where I'm gonna be, and then I get off. 1, it's great for your mental health. And 2, all you see on social media is other people's highlight reels. You see all their successes, you don't see their failures, and it just makes you feel bad about yourself. So if I could give any advice to aspiring voice actors, it would be to just focus on doing the job, being good at the job, being professional, and don't worry about what's going on with the rest. of the world.
That is smart. I'm gonna say, do you sing?
I do, yes.
Okay, keep that up. Continue with voice lessons because a lot of people don't realize a lot of us in the dubbing industry particularly come from a musical background because there's a weird kind of syncopation to matching those flaps. I used to do tap, so in my mind, whenever I think of like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and that's what I follow. So, and also it'll help you with the breath support and it'll help you with your range. And I will tell you this now, voice teachers will tell you that you cannot change your range. You absolutely can. If you go back and look at interviews with me from like the early 2000s, my voice is much lower. But because I played every little girl in anime for like 10 years, my voice like just has been creeping up ever since. So you can totally change your voice range, but yeah, singing lessons, keep that up and keep it up while you're voice acting too.
Yes.
Also, have a stage name.
Yes.
And come up with a quick signature. Those are two things
Those
I
were
never
literally
thought.
going to be mine. Mine literally were going to be, they're not about acting, but it's credit yourself under a stage name, an alias or something, because we live in an age where people will look you up and they will send you stuff to your house and they will find your children and like do not let them, don't do that. Just don't give that information, keep it to yourself. And have an autograph. If you're lucky enough that somebody wants to get your autograph one day, make it something different than your normal signature, which if you're using an alias should be very easy because it shouldn't be your real name anyway. But don't use your actual signature because that's what you need for when you're buying a house or something.
Federal documents.
Yes.
They had great advice.
It was very good. It was very good, yes.
I'm actually going to recommend you a book that I think will answer all your questions. It's called Getting In by Joel McDonald. It covers a lot of things from acting classes to how to not behave during auditions and things like that. It's fantastic. He wrote it all down so we wouldn't have to spend a whole panel talking about it.
Great question. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Zoe. I understand you've all been in the industry for quite a long time.
12 and 25 years, respectively.
Are there any roles you wish you could, if you were given time travel, to go back and redo now that you have the experience under your belt and the knowledge about the characters?
All of them? Like if I had known like what was gonna happen, especially now I think with the simuldubs, because we don't always know what's gonna happen at the end of the show. We're finding out weekly like y'all are. Some of those simuldubs are like, oh man, if I had known that was gonna happen, I would have done it differently in the beginning. But I mean, here's the thing. We put our heart and soul into it. You kind of have to just be like, I did the best I could. Now it's off there. But yeah, all of them.
It's not that I would really want to go back and do anything differently. I do wish, in my origin story, I talked about like I didn't really have any voiceover experience, and then I got into voiceover. What I don't talk about often enough is that for a year and a half, I did nothing but Walla. Because I had no voice acting experience, all of the people I was auditioning against were other voice actors that did have the experience, and they did commercial VO, and they did theater and everything like that, and I was someone who hadn't acted in 10 years, so I didn't have the experience, and for a year and a half I did Walla, and then I started getting called in less and less for auditions, and I went like 4 months with no work at all. I finally got called in for an audition for like a booby show, and I was like, I am gonna rock this. Like, this is my chance to get my foot back in the door. And so I watched like 5 episodes of the show. I took all these notes about like, this is my character's motivation. I went in, I did that audition, and as I was walking out of the building, I remember pushing open the door and thinking, I suck. Because I bombed, and I knew I bombed, like, before I even left the building. And I got in my car, and I was like, well, there's got to be some kind of correlation here. It's me. I suck. I haven't put in the work. Everyone else doing this has put in the work, and I am not putting in the work. I'm treating it like a hobby and not a career, and I need to treat it like a career if I want it to be a career. And so I hired an acting coach. I worked with an acting coach every week. I took improv lessons with Dallas Comedy House. And 6 months later, I booked my first recurring role in Assassination Classroom. So if I could go back and do anything, it would be I would have taken classes earlier, not because I want to play some different role, but because I truly believe my career would have gone down a different path. It's good it went this way because I think it gave me a big piece of humble pie pretty early on, but it would be interesting to know, like, would my career have been different if I had done the work in the beginning instead of a year and a half into my career?
I can't think of any role that I would necessarily say I want to go back and do over, just because kind of like what Monica said, like, you know, whether or not my skill level was what it is now or whatnot, like, you know, I've always given it my absolute all, so I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. There are sometimes looking back on shows, I'm like, man, I really wish we had known this thing from the end at the beginning, because maybe the way that the line was adapted, or there was a thing in the translation, or some sort of ambiguity, of course, because translating from Japanese to English is not a one-to-one science. Whether it's being dubbed or it's the subtitles or it's anything, like, you need to know so much context to have a perfect translation of it, that there are things I'm like, I wish we had known this, because we would have adapted this thing differently, you know, and then we could have maintained whatever I think would have carried a through line or something. But, like, those are pretty minor in the grand scheme. You know, we're all just doing our best. That's all there is to it.
I wouldn't replace a thing. The coolest thing about this stuff is that there's snapshots in time.
That is true.
Right? And to erase that or to lose that, oh, no. I mean, watching kind of the progression of how each of us or all of us have gone through and found ourselves and found our voices, to have that as like a living record.
And technology, too. When we started, it was tape. We recorded on tape, you guys.
For anybody here that's really young, tape is where it used to be on this big plastic cartridge.
Like a plastic rectangle, and it's got a magnetic strip in it.
It was before DVD.
I'm so old, I forgot there was a thing in between.
If I could be any character, though, like if I could audition for any series, I would be so excited to be in My Little Pony. I want to be a magical pony with a tattoo on my butt so bad.
Yeah.
This is where the unicorn art came from. I see.
Oh my God, she's a horse girl.
Unicorn heart.
Was the first Funimation Dragon Ball dub the Dragon Ball Princess, Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle or something?
I believe that is true, but I believe that the first 12 or 13 episodes of Dragon Ball were recorded by Funimation through a different studio. They didn't have a studio at that time, so that may have preceded it, but I'm not
Interesting.
Certainly in Dallas.
Because I thought the first 13 episodes of Dragon Ball were recorded later, because it was originally dubbed by Harmony Gold.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yes.
But I think that Harmony Gold and Funimation worked together for that dub.
Oh, that would have
could be
That would have
wrong.
been the 80s.
Why are you asking?
I'm asking because if you go back and watch Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle, I think is what the movie is called.
Yep.
That is, I am pretty sure, the first time Chris Sabat ever dubbed anything. And Chris Sabat is a phenomenal actor, but it is incredible to hear his first time as Yamcha.
And
Like,
that was the first thing recorded in North Richland Hills, for
yes.
sure.
So, I mean, if you want to really hear Chris Sabat and be like, this was baby Sabat, like, watch the dub of that Dragon Ball movie, because it is really excellent to hear Sabat be like, he is human. He did start like all of us. So, anyway.
Yeah, thank you for this answering the questions.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Griffin, and you covered it a little bit to where it's the Japanese to English is not necessarily a direct one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a specific line while recording that was like, that's not English?
I have a great story about this. It's not about recording per se, but I wrote a series called Bofuri. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. This is a really cute show. It's cute girls playing a game together online. There are no high stakes. It is just a fun, cute show. And I was writing a line. It was, I want to say, like episode 3. Maple had just won this competition, and she was being interviewed actually by Monica's character. Dora, I think his name is Dorazu. This cute little dragon creature. And he asks her, like, how are you feeling? And the translation, you can kind of hear her bite her tongue while she's talking because she kind of slips up, and the audience they say, did she just bite her tongue? And they're like, yeah, sure did, right? And then she's embarrassed because she bit her tongue while she's being interviewed. The translation I received was, I took a pounding, but I liked it. And I thought, that seems really out of place because the audience still responds with, did she just bite her tongue? Sure did, but it doesn't say anything about what she said. It didn't make sense to me. So I listened to it in Japanese, and I was like, I don't think that's what they actually said. And I hear her say gozaimasu, which is thank you very much, but she bites her tongue at the end. So I readapted the line to say, it was tough, but I'm hoppy instead of happy. Thank you very much. And had them say, did she just say hoppy? And they're like, yeah, sure did, because it was hard to be like, you have to bite your tongue while you say this, Megan. And I had a lot of people come after me and be like, you censored a joke. And I'm like, I made it closer to what the original Japanese was. And I actually had people defend me that were like, I speak fluent Japanese, and the dub is more accurate than the subtitle. And I guess what happened is whoever did the subtitles wasn't sure how to translate this moment into a moment that would make sense in an American comedy because of the way the Japanese language works. And so they did this thinking it would work. But given the way the show was, that sort of joke didn't really hit home. It wasn't that kind of show. So that's my biggest example I think of.
Mine is a writing one too. Has anybody seen Love Tyrant? If you haven't, you should. It's actually really good. But the main character is dressed as a shrimp at one point. And so whenever there's a thing on the screen, you have to kind of match whatever's happening on the screen. Well, the translation was too short. So whenever it comes up short, you either have to find a way to lengthen the line or to add to it. And it needed a whole other sentence. So I was like, what am I going to do? She's in a shrimp costume. This is crazy. And I jokingly wrote as an alternate line, man, it's hard out here for shrimp. And I'll be damned if that's not the line they recorded and put on the DVD. So I have to say I'm a little proud of that one. But yeah, sometimes it's hard because as adapters, we try to use the manga, but sometimes the manga doesn't help you. Sometimes things are short. And if you don't have a manga, like I don't know if Love Tyrant does, it's harder to try to figure out how to fill out those flaps.
I had to do a similar thing in Slime. There's a Gabiru, the lizard man, gets hit and he goes, itai, which just means ouch. But he had like 3 flaps, and so it's like, I can't just be like, ouch, because that would look bad. So I wrote, my toesies. And to this day, whenever like I drop something near my foot, like Cliff and I will be like, my toesies.
God, I have so many examples of this because I directed for a number of years, and I was really, everybody up here can attest to it. Like, I was always very diligent about, like, this is not what they're saying, you know. And but the one that still haunts me to this day is similar to what Kristen was talking about. There was a show called New Game, which I loved to death. It was so good, and the second season was so great. And the whole show, nobody swears. They don't swear in it at all, okay? But in the last episode, the main character calls another character, like, bakayaro, which is effectively like saying you are extremely stupid. Like, the word is not a swear, really, but she says, like, effectively a third-tier word. So if you think about words like poop, crap, and the S word, right? Like, those are 3 tiers, right? She says effectively a third-tier word for stupid. And we don't really have that. And this is pre-merger Crunchyroll translated the show, and they translated it as a-hole. And I was like, what? Like, that's not even a word you can say on TV. They have to censor that word. You know, like, that is a very hard swear. And so I was really torn because I was like, I know she doesn't swear here in Japanese. She just says a very harsh word, and we don't have a word for it. But I was like, but I also can't not say this now because of, like, what Kristen was talking about. I'm like, people are going to accuse us of censoring the show when it's not censoring. It's fixing it to actually be more accurate to what they said. And so I ended up having to split the difference a little bit, and I had her say you're a real pain in the A, because I was like, well, it's not as vulgar as what they said in the subtitles, but it'll also kind of get us around the censorship thing. And I still don't know if I made the right choice, because like literally the manga and any other translations that New Game has had, they have it correct. But because that was what was in the subtitles, I just felt like I was kind of painted into a corner with it. So.
I followed Kristen's first bit of advice and never had social media, so I never know.
Smart man.
Smart. I'm glad I was able to help you. You're welcome.
Yeah, future help. It was weird, but I don't have necessarily any of like those precise examples. When we were working on Yu Hakusho, in most cases, translations were made available to the writing team, but they didn't necessarily make it into the booth with us. So there was very little, and I had a subtitled version I had referenced, but again, nothing really seemed like it was drifting too far or off. So I don't have any immediate examples of it.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for your
Those were
questions.
really long answers. We apologize.
No problem. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry if we didn't get to your question. Guys. We have such wonderful voice actors here. The line was so long.
Well, we will be at our tables too, so y'all feel free to come by and ask us questions.
Yes, you'll be there for the rest of the weekend. So if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, please go visit our wonderful voice actors there. And the last couple minutes, do you have anything that you want that you live in the world of NDAs, but anything coming up that you would like to talk about for the audience?
Monster Hunter Wilds is out right now. You guys can play it and hear me as Gemma saying, thank you or hello a million times. Shavar. So please that. Other than that, if you come to my table, I do draw all of my own art prints. Everything on the table is drawn by me. I think if you go to Monica's table, I might have a print at Monica's table.
Yes.
And Cliff has some prints drawn by me, so I'm just slowly making my way around the world. Or if you've ever wondered what you would look like as an anime character, I can draw you. It's like a caricature that you'd get on the boardwalk, but you'll like it at the end. So if you've ever wondered about that, please come by. I'm trying to send my kid to college this year, so I would really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, tying the knot with the Amagami sisters, Apothecary Diaries, Dragon Ball Daima. There's so much going on, and now we're about to switch into a whole new slew of shows, so y'all keep up with us, because there'll be a lot of announcements soon.
Dr. Stone, the last season, part 1 just ended, because we're pulling the Attack on Titan maneuver of having multiple parts. But part 2 starts in July. I assume Ryusui will come back, so look forward to that and get caught up if you haven't watched part 1 just yet. There should be a new The Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai season coming up, which I voice a character named Yuma in that, so I'm hoping he shows up in that. And then, of course, come October, I believe it's been announced that we will be doing the final season of My Hero Academia.
Woo!
If you like anime, stream it on Crunchyroll.
There we go. On that note, one more round of applause for Kristen McGuire, Monica Rial, Clifford Chapin, and Justin Cook. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to take a quick stage selfie, so if you would like to join, please come on up to the stage. Don't get on the stage. Come close to the stage. We're going to take one lovely photo.